Please join me in welcoming our speaker, Lorrie from Halifax.
Thanks, everyone. Can you all hear me? It's not that big of a room, but okay, great.
The mic a little bit more closer to
A little bit more. There we go. Also, I wore the wrong glasses today, so these are just coming right off. Thanks for your interest in deep retrofits. I am actually, people are like, what's your deal? Because I'm actually kind of representing equally two organizations. So Habit Studio is my first company. It's an architecture firm, and we specialize in custom homes, passive house deep retrofits, but everything we do takes building science into account. So sometimes we just consult straight up on building science. And about 5 years ago, just as the pandemic was ramping up, I jokingly say that I accidentally started a second company. The Recover Initiative began as a series of technical studies that I was heading up, and it evolved into a deep retrofit accelerator funded by NRCan. We're working on advancing deep retrofits across Atlantic Canada because they're so badly needed. So I'm going to go quickly through a few slides. I think if you're in this room, you probably have a sense of why we need deep retrofits. And in my experience, building owners are increasingly demanding them. So they are. The biggest reason is to lower their operating costs, and that's not just energy costs, it's also maintenance. Your maintenance and maintenance capital go down dramatically when you've done a deep retrofit. Comfort is really important to eliminate drafts and poor kind of heating and cooling in buildings. And health measures, so we need to address indoor air quality, humidity, and mold, and that really, over the last few years, has really taken, a focal point. And then resilience. There's nobody in this region that hasn't seen some scary impacts of climate change in the last couple of years. And on the policy side of things, we have commitments to achieve net zero in Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, and Newfoundland by 2050, and in PEI, they're trying to do it by 2040. And so there's really no way to do that without deep retrofits. And so, the question is not really why, it's how the heck are we going to do it? To be clear what we actually are talking about, a deep retrofit is an effort that comprehensively addresses the not just the building energy use, but also kind of any other deficiency in a building. So I sometimes say that I am being efficient by taking the word energy out of this phrase, but I really have trained myself to say deep retrofit and not deep energy retrofit, because the benefits of doing deep retrofits go so far beyond energy savings. But we are looking for at least a 50% energy savings in our building, as well as addressing the durability and comfort and other issues. And so we're going to be looking to see upgrades related to the building envelope, right-sized mechanical systems, renewables, and better controls as part of a deep retrofit project. And it's really great when you get to do these upgrades all at once, but phasing is very common, and the sequence of upgrades matters. So I'm going to talk about that a bit more. So we're not talking about shallow retrofits, and we're not talking about piecemeal retrofits, both of which are pretty common in practice right now in our industry. And so shallow retrofits just don't go far enough. When we think about the volume of buildings that we need to tackle, we really need to look at it through a lens of, if I'm the last person who's going to work on this building before 2050, are we going far enough? Is it going to get this building and this building owner and users what they need with the retrofit? And then piecemeal retrofits are a little bit different because they may go far enough on some measures, but they're not comprehensively planned as part of a system. And buildings are a system, and when you change one thing in a building, it has an impact on the way the other elements of that building work. So piecemeal retrofits are things like just topping up some insulation or adding a heat pump without sort of keeping in perspective that this building may also receive other upgrades and should also receive other upgrades in its lifespan. So if we want impact in the work that we're doing, both in terms of energy and carbon reductions, but also in terms of making sure that the people using the buildings are healthy and comfortable and happy, and that the investment that the owner is making in the building is actually achieved, we need to be thinking more holistically. So zooming in on HVAC, heating and cooling accounts for at least 60% of the energy used by most of our buildings, at least in our region. And if we improve the building envelope by adding insulation and sealing air leaks and replacing windows, then the heating and cooling loads can drop by up to 75%. That changes the size and the distribution approach and also significantly sometimes, depending on what the system is, the cost. And so in case it isn't obvious also, we want every building to have a heat pump. But the issue is, and the kind of dilemma is, if we size the HVAC based on today's loads, before an envelope is fixed, you're going to end up with oversized equipment when that owner eventually looks at upgrading the building envelope. And in my experience, most of them do eventually. Sometimes it happens with the same owner, sometimes it happens when the building changes hands. People, even when they lower their energy costs by installing a heat pump, most of the time the comfort and health issues persist. So I'm talking about drafts, I'm talking about condensation that builds up on windows, so you end up potentially with moisture and mold concerns. And so, if those owners do the work, then they end up potentially with heat pumps that don't actually work effectively in terms of things like short cycling or maybe less efficient operation. So I'm going to give you a case study. This is actually a building that I consulted on. And I'm going to talk about a couple of residential projects, but these things that I'm talking about apply to commercial buildings as well. I think I was invited to speak on residential work, but it's not, building science is building science. Like, it's just kind of like the degree of certain results might change if you're looking at a different kind of building. So this is an old building. When this particular owner bought it, it had a mix of vinyl and single glazed windows and some insulation, but definitely not, complete thermal barrier, and it wasn't well insulated. It had a natural gas boiler with rads, and it had about 6 air changes per hour. That's me guessing. They couldn't find their original Energuide audit, so I was extrapolating back from the report I received. So some attention had been given, though, to air sealing. And they did, at the time that they bought the house, what they thought was going to make sense. They added spray foam insulation in the basement to kind of warm up their feet, and that got them just a little bit of a change in terms of air change improvement or air tightness improvement. They also had a unused chimney going through the house. So when you've got a chimney that's unused, you're basically just venting to the outdoors all the time. And they bought a heat pump, and it was an 1110 mini split that got installed with a few heads. So that got them 30% energy savings and 50% GHG, which isn't bad, but they weren't happy. Like they really still were, kind of couldn't sit very close to windows, and they had really frustrating, like they had to have a dehumidifier going on their second floor almost continuously, like even in winter. So they had humidity issues that the air, the stack effect was basically impacting them. It did bring the house on par with kind of code minimum for today, but still they weren't happy. And so they came to us and said, we've spent a bunch of money, but it's not done what we needed. And so we made some recommendations, including replacing the windows. I mean, having single glazed windows, they're pretty leaky, and they're, in terms of conduction, they're really cold. Doing a bunch of air sealing, including, I recommended that they get Aero Barrier to come and air seal the house. And if they get that level of air tightness, they're going to need fresh air. I also told them to take down the chimney, which they were very happy to do. So we added, because it's a very old house and has lots of kind of chopped up little spaces, like an HRV retrofit was not viable. And so we recommended the sort of through-wall Cyclone or similar model of HRV, and I think they needed like 2 or 3 on both levels of the house. And through some of the walls had empty cavities. So no, we recommended that they blow in spray like cellulose insulation into those cavities, because they had basically bought the house, did a bunch of renovations, moved into it, and lived in it for a while. So they weren't like gonna move out and like gut it. It just like was not a viable scenario for them. They were open to changing the siding when the siding, kind of once this paint job is gone, kind of. So as they upgrade the roof, when the roof needs a new membrane, and when the siding gets replaced, they will be able to address like more of the thermal enclosures afterwards. And so if they do everything on my list, and they're not gonna, because again, it's a young couple, they got babies, they're not gonna do it all at once. It's a very common thing that happens where we're doing a combination of piecemeal, but it's better, like what they asked us to do and what we try to do for every owner is, we're not going to give you like the plan for the next thing. We're going to give you the plan for like all the things that you could do to get this building optimized, even if it takes you like 10 or 15 or 20 years. If it's your forever house, that's like way more viable than if it's somebody who's going to like, move out in 5 years, but we still think it's really valuable to have that plan. And if they do everything, they're going to achieve 70% energy savings, and it will be draft-free, and it will be, they'll eliminate those really annoying moisture. They won't need a dehumidifier all the time. But the problem is they've got an 11-ton heat pump now, and if they do all that work, they're only going to need a 2.5-ton unit. And so, like, I am not confident that their current heat pump is going to like be the right heat pump for them afterwards. I'm a deep retrofit expert. I'm an envelope expert, so y'all can argue with me if you're like, no, that heat pump will be okay. Like, you are the heat pump experts in this room. But my education has told me that they're likely to experience like performance issues when the loads go down with this current setup. And if it takes them 10 or 15 years to do the retrofits, it doesn't matter, because they can probably like, they'll be approaching the end of life for the heat pump that they've got, which is maybe 5 years old now. So I'm really telling you this story to show that the order of operations is important if we're gonna do the right thing in the big picture. And because if you're in this situation where you've got clients who are like, this building has had this, that, and the other thing, but it's not perfect, or you've had a building that's recently had a bunch of envelope work, you really need to ask the question, like, is the heat pump that's there that we're replacing the right size, or can we downsize it for optimizing the performance? So HVAC isn't just like a piece of the puzzle. It's like kind of often the pivot point that determines whether a retrofit is gonna deliver on its promise. And that The other thing is that you're probably like, Lorrie, you're so naive. People call us when their furnace breaks. They don't call us when they want to do a master plan for their entire building. That's very real. We're going to talk about some, ways to think about that as we go through this presentation, and just to kind of anchor in on what is the right approach. We want to have an energy assessment. Everyone who comes to me, I point them to one of the service providers with Efficiency Nova Scotia and say, if you don't have an EnerGuide audit, I can do an assessment, but I actually want that EnerGuide audit to back up my kind of judgments on a building. You're going to identify the major upgrades. Even if you're not going to do all of them today, it's finding opportunities for how we can best serve this owner and this building. And then we'll complete the envelope upgrades first. That's the best case scenario. And then assess the loads and right size the HVAC stuff. And you can kind of do it all at once and cross your fingers, but there are some very real scenarios where you might have an air tightness target that just is unachievable, and so you want to know the kind of follow-up result from the energy audit to really understand how to size the heat pump, and then do the HVAC upgrades, of course. I see some of you taking pictures. These slides are going to be sent out after, and if they aren't, you can call me up and I'll give them to you. So this is my building. I bought this building to do a deep retrofit as a demonstration project with my business partner, and it's an 1850s Halifax house that we've turned into our office. So it's basically a house, but it's functioning as a commercial building now. It hadn't been touched. I had a bunch of pictures in here, and then I realized I was going to talk too much, so I didn't. I stripped out the pictures of before, but this building had 5 fireplaces, just 4 of them on one massive chimney, but still, it had a lot of fireplaces. It had no insulation, and I always say this with a little caveat. We had a blower door test that said it was 24 air changes per hour, but it was like putting a blower door out in the field. It was, I don't think that it was even right. And so, really untouched. The previous owners had done a few things, but there was a 1990s kitchen and bathroom, but there weren't any kind of modern energy upgrades. And what we did to the building, because we're passive house designers, we actually did a passive house retrofit. I say deep retrofit and passive house retrofit a little bit interchangeably. So it's got now triple glazed windows and R24 in the walls and R64 in the roof. We also insulated the basement and what was a pile of joists on the ground at the back of the building, and so the floors are also now insulated, and we are targeting 1 air change per hour. We actually haven't had a blower door test since we spray foamed the basement. So we were at 3.9 before spray foaming the basement, so we're crossing our fingers that we're now at our target. And our little FLIR camera shows us that's where all the holes were, so hopefully the FLIR isn't lying to me. And we installed a ducted mini split that serves the 2 upper levels and a mini split in the basement. The basement's kind of its own zone. We have it as a separate airtight compartment because it's a spider cave, or it started out as one anyway, and we weren't sure that we were going to get passive house in the basement. And just to give you a perspective on the savings, what we achieved, so just cutting our air tightness by about 1/3, if we're going from right to left, or cutting our air tightness, if we hit that target, we'll have saved 1/3 of this is the heating demand energy. It's not the total energy, but the heating demand was 90% of the energy in the original state for this building. And of course, if we get air tightness, we're going to add ventilation. And so we kind of combine those 2 measures. So we get a little bit more savings from that ERV. And then just changing the windows and doors without adding any insulation. Oh, I'm sorry, it's jumping ahead on me. Those windows and doors save us about another third of the energy. Again, they're triple glazed, they're really high performance windows, but that's a meaningful jump down for sure. And then the roof and wall insulation get us more than a third. So I'm really sharing this just to show the real impact of those envelope savings. And you guys may never deal with a house that's completely uninsulated, so understand that there's kind of degrees here. Yeah, you have a question?
Did you have a 200 amp panel with it, or you had to put that in?
We had to replace the panel.
How many, you had a lot of baseboards in it, or just a handful?
There were just a handful of baseboards. I gather they were still using those fireplaces. I'm not really sure. But I will tell you, so when we bought the building, we bought it in the fall of the year. I think we took possession in early to mid-November. And we went through and turned all the baseboards off, but we missed one. We didn't know that there was one in the basement. And so we had that baseboard running for about 6 weeks. I think it was set to 15. It wasn't set to, max or anything. And we only knew that that was the case when we got a $2,300 bill from Nova Scotia Power for 6 weeks. So I can't even really figure out how to do the math on what the previous owners must have been paying. I feel like they were wearing all their clothes and just huddled up in one corner of that house. It was very scandalous, I will say. And it was an elderly woman, so yeah.
I don't know if you want to answer this, but how much money have you gone through?
How much money have I gone through?
Yeah.
Well, this is about the value, so I think I have a slide about it in a couple of minutes. But so we bought this in 2021 and went through the whole place and came up with a budget for what we wanted to do, which was a very naive budget. We're like professionals, and we were still like, oh yeah, we can do it for cheaper because we know everybody and stuff, right? And our builder was like, oh yeah, I can get the flooring guy to throw this in. And anyway, so we set a budget of about 250 grand, knowing that it was going to be probably more like 350 grand. But the other thing that happens when you're architects, and especially when you have I have a team of 7, we're like, oh, if we're doing this, let's get the pretty whatever it is, right? So some of the stuff that we spent money on was not related in any way. We're bringing people into this building to market deep retrofits, passive house, and to sell people on it. So we definitely upgraded some things that didn't need to be, I'll put it that way. And so we spent just shy of 700 grand on our retrofit. And that worked out to be about, I kind of do the math two ways. 90% of the work was on the main floor and the second floor, but we did insulate the basement. We did replace we did pour a concrete floor. It didn't have one. We did a bunch of work in the basement as well. So if you don't count the basement, I think we spent $380 a square foot. If you count the basement, it was $330. It's still some of it was structural. We initially that was the big jump from 200 to 300. Actually, initially we intended to keep the roof, but if you can imagine a massive masonry chimney in contact with a timber roof for 170 years, it was a sponge. Just the middle part, it was really, we were pretty devastated because we're sentimental about the heritage, the timber framing and the joinery in the building were really beautiful, but we had to replace the roof. So just replacing the roof, and there was some complexity with that. So there was a cost that we didn't, that had to happen. But not a lot of the other structural needed attention. It was really in great shape. The wood they had back then was really strong. So, yeah. Oh yeah, sorry.
So the ERV
Yes.
is a very modest reduction compared to
But
everything
it's
else.
because, on the assumption, it's really challenging. First of all, this building was just venting to the outdoors continuously. But what essentially, I have an energy model, and at the existing performance, I just dialed down the air tightness to 1 air change per hour. Literally, I modeled it in the order that you see on this screen. Like, it's kind of like do the things you absolutely have to do first and the most impactful things, and then, kind of address them. And so the ERV is saving some of the energy, but because if you're adding ventilation to a building that has no ventilation, there's a like you're losing energy. So the ERV that we have has something, it's a European passive house ERV, so like the percentages are slightly different because of the way that their testing protocols are different, but so it's around 92% energy is kept in the building, or heat at least is kept in the building.
And this model was IES, BE, is that what you used? Like, what did you use for energy?
Oh, my energy model, I use a passive house modeling approach. So and I mean, that's like great question, because like if you're using other models, of course, you'll probably get similar degrees of results, but it won't be exact. And I will also say the passive house model is called Passive House Planning Package. It's conservative. So when I say we've saved 88% of the energy, like somebody doing a HOT 2000 model might say it's 90% or something, or or even more. Anytime I've had like a comparable model, the passive house model has been the more conservative one. So I like using that also just because I don't want to be a greenwasher. So this is just like a graph. Sorry, the white, I should have changed that white, but part of the bar. But basically, the line on the top is the energy balance before. So, heat flows in have to equal heat flows out. And the little block at the bottom is just all of the loads in the building compressed. And so I'm sure you can't read that, but we've saved, we've pretty much tackled every way that heat was being lost through the building. Right now, without even hitting my 1 air change per hour, those are the savings that you see on the screen. So about 88% in heating demand has been saved, 86% in total energy, and 90% in GHG. So if I hit my 1, I probably gained like 2 points in all of those. Like I'm chasing like minor amount of savings at this point by hoping to get 1 air change per hour. But just wanted to tell you what the details are today and not greenwash. So on the, just looking at if somebody bought that, nobody was going to buy this building and just move in. Like, let's be real. But if they did,
Did you get it for a deal?
oh, no, but we were actually the low bidder, but we wrote a letter and said, we're going to fix this building and save it. Everyone else was like, it's also the site is zoned to be much taller. So they were all like, oh, dollar signs, right? Like they were gonna like build, and the house next door was for sale at the same time. So they could have bought a block of 2 and made a, apartment building if they wanted to. So we were like, please sell it to us because we're nice. And she did. I did not. It was around $500,000 that we paid. And I'm not rich. Don't even tell me. I still don't know how I did it. We sold our souls, basically. Called in a lot of favors. Architects aren't rich. So if we had moved in and put in a heat pump, it would have needed to be at least a 12-ton heat pump, by my calculations. In the design, in my energy model, it called for about, not even 2 tons for the whole building. And again, we're kind of differentiating between the basement and the upper levels because the upper 2 floors are what we're kind of, those are our conditioned area. The basement, even though it's airtight and insulated now. I'm only 5'3" and I can stand up between the joists, but like all the guys I sent down there were just like wanted to murder us because it's low. It's not a fun place to work. And so what got installed was a 2-ton serving the upper levels and 1 ton serving the basement. And I'm just sharing this because, and it kind of like it all got roughed in. And our contractor set up, got the 1 ton in the basement working, partly because like guys were working down there and heat rises, and never actually hooked up the 2 ton for close to a year. And so that 1 ton worked through a winter, And everyone was in there in their t-shirts. Everyone was like, all you need is 1 ton. And I'm like, I tried to say that, but like the guy wouldn't sell it to me. And so it's a little bit frustrating now. We're very comfortable in there, although I do think it was kind of doing some short cycling over the summer. So we're just kind of, we probably need a tune-up. We have a tune-up scheduled. I don't think it's perfect, even though I'm a pro, and we started also, our negotiations started with our contractors wanting to put 4 tons plus 2 tons, and I talked them down, I halved it, but, and that's not like a fault on contractors either. People are not, like very few people encounter like a passive house level of energy efficiency. And so it's really hard to, like most of the single family homes that I model, like new builds, wouldn't even need a ton for like a kind of average size house. And most of my clients get much bigger heat pump than they really need because the industry doesn't yet understand how to heat these buildings. So a lot of them just don't even have it on. And a lot of the time, a passive house doesn't need the heat. It's just like at the extremes that we need the heat. So thank you for asking the economic question, because that's really important to understand. And so we actually, I'm not an economist, but our team works closely with someone who does economic modeling for us so that we can make sure that we understand the impact of what we're recommending and like sometimes like it does not make sense to push energy efficiency at all costs. If there's not a business case for it, then there's not a business case for it. But when we're looking at something that is, like a building that is an asset with a very long lifespan, it's also, even though it's like we're kind of conditioned to look at like 10, 15, 20 years and look for a payback, we actually should be looking at like what's gonna last for like the anticipated useful life of this building. And so that's how we look at every building. And so this project was expensive. And we were like, did I just throw away my money? Like, should I have knocked this building down like all the other owners were gonna do and built a new building? Should we have just done a code minimum retrofit? Because those were the 2 other scenarios that we thought were viable. So we had our economics guy, his name is Jim. So we had Jim do this total cost of building ownership modeling for us. And his kind of standard is to do a 60-year model, because he's like, what you're doing, this building, optimistically, we'd like it to last another 100 years. But like 60 years, it'll need a major renovation by that point. And it'll need, upgrades to equipment and different things in the interim, like maybe a window replacement, 30, 40 years, something like that. These windows last a long time. And so what you can see here is this graph is comparing the total cost of ownership for those scenarios. So the code minimum retrofit is the kind of solid red line. Code minimum new build is the dotted red line. So doing a code minimum new build, most expensive, both most expensive upfront and for the life of the building, because we would be servicing the debt on that building for, it had a significant value. And then I was saying to a couple people as I came in today, Efficiency Nova Scotia recommended that I present on this topic, and it's because we sweet-talked them into giving us a better than typical incentive so that I would do whatever they ask me to for a few years. So basically there's the passive house without, or with the regular grant, I would say, and then the passive house with the grant, and the with the grant is the building that we got. So in both cases, this retrofit is the lowest cost of building ownership, and with my grants, it's the lowest cost that I will pay for this project for the whole time I own it. If I had no support, where these 2 lines kind of cross, can you see my, yes, okay. So, the kind of code minimum retrofit and the passive house without a grant are kind of following almost the same line. It's only after, like, this is about, I don't know, 38 years or something, where I really am ahead in terms of my spending. But I also have a team of people who design passive houses all day, every day for people. And up until we moved into this building, we were all wearing all our clothes. Every office we worked in was had terrible air quality and was like, you know, uninsulated warehouse buildings. Like we had this series of them. So my team now doesn't have to be jealous all day of the people that we're working with, and we can really actually speak with experience on the value of this building, of this approach that we've been working on for like 10 plus years at this point. And so, you know, just like digging in slightly more onto those economics, and P.S., you're like, yeah, but you started with the worst building in Halifax. So, like, is this still, like, does it pan out if you have, like, a different kind of building? We do still see similar patterns, like other buildings that I've had. I've had Jim actually model new buildings compared with, like, a new build and a code minimum. The long term, where the people pay a bit more, but they enjoy the benefits, you know, all throughout, pans out across almost every model that we've looked at. And in most of our passive house new build projects, what we see is that your mortgage plus utilities is immediately less than your mortgage plus utilities in a code minimum house. So even if your capital costs are more because you've got a bit more insulation, that what we see is people right out of the gate in a new build are seeing immediate financial benefits. So in this case, these numbers are actually out of date. So I realized that I put the wrong slide in here after I got here today. So Jim did this model halfway through, and then we updated it. So this number where we have 1,027,000 is more like, you know, 1.1 something. But all of the numbers would have gone up because it wasn't that we spent on more stuff. It was also that our project took way longer than anticipated, and we had some pretty significant delays. We had delays related to Fiona and the floods and the forest fires in 2023 because our builders, many of their crew lived in areas badly impacted, and then they were on contract to Pictou Lodge, which really sucked for me because Pictou Lodge needed them basically for, I don't know, 4 or 5 months continuously. So all of these numbers went up because of inflation over the course of the project. So there's not like passive house didn't get, or my project that got built didn't, you know, go up while the other two stayed stable. And so looking at the comparison of the utility costs, because that's the, you know, one of the big drivers of making the decision to go to this level of efficiency. Our project as built is, I mean, you know, water and sewer are just assumed as constant across these scenarios. But for electricity and total utilities, the building, the deep retrofit is, you know, around half of a code minimum retrofit and a little, you know, more than half of if it was a code minimum new build. And the thing that often isn't factored in terms of operating costs is the maintenance and maintenance capital, particularly maintenance capital. So maintenance capital means every time you replace your roof or you replace like a large, you know, like you replace a heat pump or an element of the building that has a large capital cost. If you're looking long-term, if these aren't factored in, your operating costs are just going to be wrong. And in this case, it's funny, Jim suggested to me that if I had a smaller heat pump, that my maintenance capital would be, you know, would be quite a bit lower, but I don't think that's true. I mean, like, it's only like a ton or something different between like what I modeled and what it didn't, but it's really the difference between the code minimum and the passive house retrofit here is just that you know, we actually just chose higher efficiency equipment than we presumed that a code minimum retrofit would get. So we could be wrong on that, but there were some assumptions made about what the, you know, the theoretical code minimum obviously didn't actually get built. So those are just guesses. But you don't just have expenses, you also have equity. And so the model also factors in the value of appreciating building value over time. And so that's where doing a retrofit without the grant, it would have been kind of my equity minus the total cost of ownership would have been neck and neck with a cold minimum new build. So this actually, I'm just really sharing it because I want people to understand the value of that for these kinds of projects right now, we really need the incentives. And so, but I was relieved to see it, frankly, because I wouldn't have much to talk about, or I would really have to frame things differently if I wanted to talk about this project, and this wasn't the best investment. All right, so enough about this project, and I'm happy to answer. Oh.
Were you able to disclose how much you got for your grant?
Yeah, they gave us 200 grand. No, they didn't. I'm a liar. They gave us 150 grand.
Now, one big fat check, or they drove it out to you?
No, it was like in draws. Yeah. Yeah. So,
Sorry, one more question.
Yeah.
What month in 2021 did you purchase the building?
it was like November. So we applied for a building permit immediately, and we got our building permit in June of 2022 because Halifax was a gong show. And I did not want to be in all Nova Scotia as a person who did work without a building permit. Neither did my builder. So we just we were frustrated, but we didn't start until the building permit went through, except for a few minor kind of demo things. And so work started in, essentially July of 2022, and we only finished in the spring of 2025, kind of March. And although there are, kind of a handful of minor things that we're still attending to. And so I really should do a little bit of analysis so I could tell people exactly how long the work took, because as I said, there were some big delays. There were also some we had the typical COVID supply chain delays going on too. There was because of whatever the size of the beam we needed in the roof, for some reason, it took 8 weeks or something stupid like that. And so and you kind of can work around things, but then at a certain point you're just making work, killing time. So there were some big pauses for a range of reasons. And there was a tiny bit of rework also, and rework largely because there's very few people experienced in doing a passive house retrofit. And so our builder, the kind of lead hand who was on the job for a little bit, was in over his head. And we were like, oh, and so we had to backpedal a little bit and do a little bit of a restart at one point.
What did your neighbors think of this project?
Well, hilariously, so the house next door to us sold at the same time. And he walked in, blasted it full of spray foam, and then laughed at us for 3 years. Kinda. And the neighbor on the other side, we were very fortunate. So this is on Falkland Street. It's a tiny little street. It's almost impossible to get a big truck in there, or to stage a project. Our parking ticket budget was just outrageous. I actually should make a graph about that probably for our workers. But we had there's a vacant lot right next to our building where a house burnt down about 20 years ago. And the owner of that lot has a plan to put a house there, but has not done so. And so we rented that space so that, a handful of the builders could park there, and, we could put a dumpster there and things like that for the duration of the project. Without that, we would have I don't think it would have been possible, frankly. I don't know how anybody works in that neighborhood.
Just a comment here, when Trump was building his big building in Toronto, which ended up being kicked out and changed, that was a very slow project because in downtown Toronto, they couldn't get the cement trucks there and everything else because of the traffic and everything else, and lifting all the cement up there. It just slowed the whole project down.
It's a really big problem that doesn't always get discussed. But it's also funny, so I'm an instructor for Passive House Canada sometimes. So right now, mainly I teach a retrofits course. And in that course, there's a few slides of essentially projects like this one, but in Manhattan. And it blows my mind. I'm like, are you building this with a helicopter? Like, where does your truck come from with like your lumber and your all of that stuff?
It's highly scheduled, early in the morning, it's just a nightmare.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. And it's so frustrating, like, especially if you're like carrying heavy equipment to install and there's, you're blocks and blocks away from the building. Like, it's definitely.
You schedule the train, the crane, and if you miss that window.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No. Yeah, that could be a whole other hour or 3. So back to, I've talked about, a couple of planned retrofits, but like, what if HVAC can't wait? Like, a lot of times we have a situation where like a furnace is broken in January and people who like maybe had an idea that they might someday do something are forced with a decision right away. In that case, you can still set that owner up for success by choosing like variable capacity equipment potentially, that can handle a range of loads. You can also talk to them about the option, if I think you have to get a feel for them, but you can like talk to them about if they think that there's a envelope upgrade in their future, if they're thinking about replacing windows, if they're thinking about, when my roof is replaced, I'm going to add insulation, or the same thing for the siding. A lot of people are having those thoughts. And so if that's the case, and like within like 5 years they're going to do something like that or so, like you could slightly undersize it. Like you could just be like, we're just going to, it might not do, like everybody's got backup heat, or almost everybody does, unless it's a brand new house. So you could do a bit of education, and just have the conversation that you're designing with a future retrofit in mind. Oops, and look at all that. Way to go. I always do that. I just keep talking. You guys will have the slides. And so, yeah, challenges. This industry is, we have lots of new building going on, so this industry isn't fully reactive, but there's a lot of reactive projects going on. And so some of the challenges that we have, like market realities, owners replace things when equipment fails, coordination, like how often is there actually a conversation between who's doing the envelope work and how successful that's going and the HVAC installers? I don't see it a lot. And depending if it's a big project where there's a general, maybe they're on top of that, but often they're just on top of a schedule and a budget. And the technical realities are load calculations are not always performed. I talk to people and they're like, oh, we always do them. But like, I actually see, I've worked on projects where they're just like, well, this worked in the other house, so that was close to this size. And they rarely account for the envelope performance if it's a high performance building. There is a big fear of undersizing in a cold climate. And there's not a lot of experience in the optimal sequencing. And honestly, we don't always have, maybe only half the time that we have the opportunity to deal with a project or work on a project that has optimal sequencing. But the flip side is it's an opportunity, those of us who are trying to do better and advance kind of our industry, we can position ourselves as contractors or service providers who understand how the HVAC fits in the big picture, and stand out by offering future ready solutions. Always consider, is like for like the thing to do? It's not always the right thing, and I would say it's possibly almost never the right thing to do. Talk to owners about investing in, are they investing in envelope measures, and do they even understand the relationship? Because a lot of people don't. A lot of people, like we've had a lot of marketing about like the beauty of heat pumps, and heat pumps are really helpful, but if we look at it in a more holistic way, your clients are going to be happier. Like my clients I talked about at the beginning who thought that they did the right thing and then still ended up with some pretty significant problems in their house. And collaborate and coordinate to avoid piecemeal solutions. So understand what's going on, what other contractors might be working on a property, so that you're fully informed, and your recommendations may change if you knew that an envelope retrofit was going to happen imminently. And then support owners in navigating incentives. I think a lot of people already do this, but that landscape is just, as we all know, like, changes every day. If you can reassure owners that, you're aware of them, so that you're not doing work that maybe goes counter to what they might get a benefit for, that's going to help. So I talked about this opportunity. Here's the real opportunity. Atlantic Canada needs to retrofit 41,000 residential units every year and 2 million square meters of commercial space every year until 2040 to meet our net zero target. And again, we all have a net zero target. Nobody's backpedaled on that yet. I'm hopeful that we don't. And the estimated cost of that is $1.5 billion per year for Atlantic Canada. Those numbers are from the Atlantic Economic Council. So that's a big problem because we don't have the industry capacity. We just don't have the resources for it in terms of money and time and everything. But innovation is happening constantly. We've heard about a few already this morning. And smart business owners will be able to capitalize, that $1.5 billion is going to somebody. Obviously, it's not all to business owners, it's to equipment and permits and all kinds of stuff. But we need this for net zero commitments, but those aren't the only reasons we need it. And that's why I think even if some incentives go away or change and policy attitudes may change, we also need it for resilience. People's homes are not, our building stock is amongst the oldest in North America, and our buildings are not up for the extreme weather challenges that are coming our way. So despite the kind of landscape of the industry, the motivations are going to be there, whether people care about energy efficiency or whether they care more about durability and resilience. And I will say that over the last 5 years in my business, in Habit Studio, maybe 10 years ago, people were coming to us and saying, we understand that you know how to make a really low energy house. Now they're coming to me and saying, I understand that you know how to make a house that'll stay warm even if my power's out for a week. That is, that really matters to Atlantic Canadians. So, I'm going to talk quickly about Recover. Recover exists because we believe the greenest building is the one that already exists. And our vision is to deep retrofit older buildings in Atlantic Canada and to develop solutions that respond to the climate crisis at speed and scale. I'm going real fast now because, we're almost at noon. I don't want to be between you guys and lunch. We're here to cut emissions, costs, and help improve health. Here's all the reasons why we need deep retrofits. And what Recover does. So Recover, we established Recover the current iteration of Recover in 2024, we received $17.5 million from the federal government to start an organization and develop programs and supports for building owners to advance deep retrofits. And so we have scaled from 0 employees to 20 as of last week. And we're doing it. So we've developed a program that can support building owners to understand their buildings, to get feasibility studies. We'll pay for technical studies and like architecture and engineering fees to get owners, help make sure they understand what they need to do to their buildings. We're doing research, so we have imminently a research report coming out on the building stock of the region and where best to focus our efforts to gain momentum on deep retrofits. So it's almost like a business plan for which buildings to retrofit first. And we're working on capacity building because I think that while retrofits cost a lot and there's a lot of challenges on the finance side of things, it's definitely a barrier. Our real barrier is that we don't have enough people working on this problem, and our trades and design industries are really spread thin in terms of who we have available to do the work. And so we are working on solutions for that. Although if anybody has any ideas, please come tell me.
I was just going to say that a lot of reality comes in the picture because most people cannot stomach the renovation.
I know.
It's just a very few of us.
We need to be
It's not for the year,
opportunistic.
2 or 3 of renovations. Never mind the money, but just the stress. A lot of renovations break up families. The marriage breaks up because of all the decisions.
I've definitely seen that, and I 100% agree with you. I also see a lot of buildings changing hands, and I think that that's a key time for us to like mobilize, to put our efforts on, you know, as somebody is about to move in or, you know, or sell a building. Like, one thing that makes me sick to my stomach is when people like slap a bunch of paint on a house and like do stuff like put in a new kitchen that I'm hired by people all the time who are like, this guy put in a new kitchen and we're gonna rip it out and put in a better kitchen. Like people doing stuff that's instant garbage in order to make a sale is offensive. And so we really need a bit of transformation in how things go down on that front. But you're not wrong. And it is one of the biggest like issues that we have. And yeah, I've actually had clients break up during projects. It's awful. You know, that's not maybe your problem, but so yeah, this is the challenge I leave you with. Like, let's think of every mechanical installation and really every retrofit in terms of the future state of the building, not just the present. You guys will all get this. I'm not going to leave this here for too long because I think I am at time. And I'm happy for any of you to come up and talk to me, tell me I'm wrong, whatever you want, over the next few hours. Thanks.